Every year, millions of Americans visit our national parks to hike, camp, and enjoy the great outdoors. But for some families and individuals, these trips have ended in tragedy. According to the United States National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, more than 600,000 persons go missing in the U.S. every year, with about 8 to 11% of these persons never getting found. While most of these disappearances have been easy to explain, often caused by hypothermia, falls, avalanches, or victims getting eaten by mountain lions, a few others have defied conventional logic and remain unsolved mysteries. Like the proverbial vanish without a trace incidents, these mysterious disappearances happen more often than most of us can imagine. So join us as we take a deep dive into how Rocky Mountain National Park workers have revealed shocking details about investigations that baffled even top U.S. park rangers. The Grand Canyon, for example, is widely regarded as one of the world's great natural wonders. From spectacular waterfalls and geysers to rushing rivers and still lakes, as well as abundant wildlife and natural serenity, the Grand Canyon has been described as paradise on Earth. But there's also a dark side to this historic park that has cost a growing list of unsuspecting visitors their lives. But the Grand Canyon is way more evil and dangerous, and sometimes it snatches the lives of even those familiar with its many deadly terrains. Like Morgan Heimer, a solid and boisterous 22-year-old river guide who mysteriously disappeared on the 6th day of an 8-day excursion of the Grand Canyon. Heimer worked for Tour West, a Colorado River rafting firm, and was very fit and was widely considered to be an outstanding swimmer and an experienced trekker. Morgan Heimer was born in Cody, Wyoming, and spent his adolescent years exploring and falling in love with nature. Although he studied English at the University of Wyoming, he decided to pursue a career as a river guide, given his track record as an experienced outdoorsman and an excellent swimmer. On June 2, 2015, Heimer embarked on an 8-day rafting trip along the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon as a guide. He had successfully taken the group for 6 days of the trip when they approached Pumpkin Spring at mile marker 213. Pumpkin Spring is a truly unique and beautiful orange rock formation sticking out of the canyon wall and shaped like a pumpkin with rounded walls and vertical streaks down the side of it. Around 4 p.m., the group had successfully returned from taking a side stream near Pumpkin Spring and was walking their boats back to the water banks. While standing near a cliff, Heimer addressed the lead rafting guide, requesting to take some time off that afternoon. But while the conversation was starting, the lead guide was quickly called upon a member of the excursion group. By the time he was done with the client and returned to Heimer, he was gone. The guide presumed Heimer had taken a break or had gone through with taking the afternoon off and would return later. But that would be the last that anyone would see or hear from the young lad. He was last seen wearing a blue plaid long-sleeve shirt, a dark-colored Astral personal flotation device, a maroon baseball cap, Chaco flip-flop sandals, vividly colored shorts, and a purple water bottle. The group swam in the river all evening and later ate dinner, but Heimer only showed up for one activity. At 7:26 p.m. on the same day, a very disturbed group member reported him missing. When Heimer mentioned that he wanted a break earlier, no one paid him much attention. The rest of the party was so confident in his skills, he was wearing a life jacket and was incredibly familiar with the terrain. This report of a missing person immediately resulted in the launch of a 6-day search by park rangers and rescue teams, who thoroughly searched the river and surrounding areas between mile markers 211 and 215. They expanded the search to Diamond Creek, 12 miles west of Pumpkin Spring, when nothing was found in the first few days. Every Tour West employee, as well as members of rafting groups and other river guides in their groups, were interviewed. Still, no information about Heimer's disappearance was uncovered. After the 6th day, the search was called off, and Heimer was assumed to have drowned. But his body never turned up. According to investigators, it's only reasonable to assume that he never made it out, but the answers to why or how to remain largely unknown. But what do you think happened to Heimer on the banks of the Colorado River? Do you think he was a victim of misadventure and got lost in the canyon? Or could it have been that he walked away from the tour that day, intending to end his life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Ruth Ann Rupert. In August of 2000, Ruth Ann Rupert, 49, left her home in Florida for a vacation in Yosemite National Park. Rupert's trip was nothing out of the ordinary. She was an expert climber who frequently traveled to achieve new heights. As a matter of fact, one of her favorite stories to tell was about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with a frozen foot. And while others would worry about Y2K, Rupert headed to Argentine Peak in Colorado to usher in the new year. For such an experienced climber, the trip to Yosemite should have been a piece of cake. Rupert had intended to join a trekking group traveling 30 kilometers across the park. Rupert was treated for an eye infection at the Yosemite Medical Clinic in the Curry Village area around noon on August 14th. She was upset when she awoke with an eye infection that forced her to ultimately miss the group while she sought medical attention. Even though she was furious, she needed to figure out how she would spend the rest of her trip. So she hired a tent cabin in Curry Village and then went shopping. She finally decided on a one-day hike from Yosemite Falls to the Foresta area. She left sometime during the afternoon after shopping, never to be seen again. She was 5'5", weighed 140 pounds, and had brown hair and brown eyes. Rupert had a prosthetic eye, and the fact that she had an eye infection in her good eye would soon be identified as a possible factor for her disappearance by investigators. Her supplies were left behind, which no seasoned hiker would do. Her family believes she would not have abandoned them and had no intention of harming herself. It appears that missing that trip with the group possibly became the most pressing matter in Rupert's life. Still, it was not something she would have gone to extremes over. And despite an extensive search and rescue operation, Rupert seemed to have disappeared forever. Oddly enough, Rupert's backpack was discovered 8 years later in Fireplace Creek, lodged in a drainage region. Curry Village is around 8 kilometers away from Fireplace Creek. It is unknown how Rupert's backpack wound up there, and her whereabouts still remain a mystery. And while experienced hikers go missing is difficult enough to comprehend, what exactly do you make of a park ranger who himself went missing and remains to be found over 40 years later? Paul Braxton Fugate. In the National Park Service, park rangers are the standard. They are who you contact when someone is hurt or lost. Paul Braxton Fugate worked as a park ranger in Chiricahua National Monument, an Arizona national park. As a result, Fugate's disappearance at the park was beyond just startling. He had left the tourist center around 2 p.m. for a trek on January 13, 1980, and was never seen or heard of again. His absence was instantly detected when he did not return to close the park. He was the park's lone permanent employee and would have stayed with the other seasonal employee to finish the job. Unfortunately, Fugate would have been a natural expert in a park search and rescue attempt. However, the Cochise County Sheriff's Department and the National Park Service were forced to carry out the search without him. Chiricahua contains 17 square miles of canyons, rugged and dangerous terrain, and wildlands. All of these made things even more difficult for the search party. The search and rescue crews discovered nothing relevant to the park ranger. When this endeavor failed, a prize of $60,000 was eventually offered to the public for any information leading to Fugate's location. Despite this, Fugate remained missing for 42 years and remained so in NPS records. In a rather bizarre turn of events, the NPS told Fugate's wife that they reviewed his case and now thought he deliberately walked off the job and was thus fired. Dottie Fugate, Fugate's wife, was unable to claim his pension or any survivor's benefits due to this. They also asked that she reimburse the $6,000 plus they had paid her during his absence. Fortunately, the matter was examined again in 1986, and Dottie would continue receiving benefits. While the National Park Service acknowledged that there was no reason to suppose Fugate was still alive, the search for him continues. As if much older adults can disappear without a trace while touring parks, how many more little kids and young teenagers like this one right here? Stacy Ann Arris. Stacy Ann Arris was 14 when she went on a Yosemite National Park guided tour in 1981. Her father and 6 other people rode mules on the journey. There are multiple campgrounds in the area, all within a mile or two of one another. Stacy's group was at Sunrise High Sierra Camp, the furthest set of cabins. She wanted to go on a neighboring lake to snap pictures after she settled in and asked her father to accompany her. He preferred to rest instead. So an elderly gentleman from the tour group, Gerald Stewart, decided to stretch his legs further and volunteered to accompany her. Stewart was 77 years old and decided to take a break along the route. The group could see Stacy and Stewart along the path as they descended from their cabins. As Stacy continued, they noticed Stewart stop and sit on a rock, and shortly after, he walked back up to the cabins from where he had sat. He inquired of other campers who had come from Stacy's way if they had seen her, but no one had. When the group discovered Stacy was no longer on the route, at the lake, or with them, they immediately launched a search for her. The following day, an extensive search party was launched, one of the largest ever seen. 3 helicopters, 2 dog search and rescue teams, and about 100 personnel searched the area. Despite the massive and fast response to Stacy's abduction, the only sign of her ever found was her camera lens cap. The culprit was extremely cautious if she was hurt, as not a single drop of blood was detected. It remains doubtful that a 14-year-old at the farthest reaches of a mountain would have strolled away, never to be seen again. If she was hurt on the route, one of the many persons in the area at the time, or one of the search groups, would have found her. Stacy would have been 57 years old today had she been found, but hers is clearly another mysterious disappearance case in Yosemite National Park. Could any of these mysterious disappearances ever get resolved? Let us know in the comments which of these cases you found the most intriguing.